Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Fascia, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Welcome to episode 73 of the Sovereign Collective podcast. This is Sasha, and I am stoked to be with Rahe for this episode where she gets into all things fascia. Unfortunately, we did have a little bit of technical difficulties with our audio, so bear with us during this interview. It doesn't take away from any of the profundity of this topic. Fascia is a topic that affects every single one of us. We are all put together by fascia. We all hold our emotions in our fascia. Our fascia is what drives so much of our pain and our emotion and so many different things. So please, please, please listen to this interview all the way to the very end. It is the first one of at least 2, if not more, because I'm currently fascinated with this topic and will be, I'm sure, forever. And I really want to learn more because it is so pervasive within us, and it's something that is, I think, finally being addressed from different perspectives, but nobody so far do I see speaking to it as Anna does. She fully integrates it into her life, and she is a real expert on this topic, and healing her fascia heals her life. So if you want to learn more, then please stay tuned. And also, if you want to support me, I would really appreciate you go to www.sovereigncollective.org/shop and check out what I have to offer there. You get some discounts on some amazing products like Living Libations and EMF protection of Justin Franson's products, tonic herbs from New Earth Organics, and some other things. Every little bit counts. I really want to grow this podcast. I'd really appreciate that.
Hey everyone,
And
Fascia
also,
here
if you
for
do
yet
like
another
this
interview for the
please
Sovereign Collective
like it,
podcast,
share
and
it,
I'm
do
joined today
all the
with Anna
things that
Rahe,
you're
and I am
supposed to do
super
that I'm supposed to
excited
tell
to
you all the
get
time,
into the
but you
topic
don't.
of
So appreciate
fascia.
you. Thank
I
you.
go down
And
these rabbit holes
enjoy
and I
the
get
show.
super obsessed with things, and fascia blows my mind because I feel it's the physical representation of the connectedness of who we are. Like, you can't affect one part without affecting the whole. And so in a world where we have doctors specializing in the tiniest minutia, and we take ourselves apart like cars, where cars doesn't have a fascia, where, everything connects everything. And so when we try to just fix one part of the body with ignoring the rest, it just doesn't work. And we can clearly see it's not working. So in comes Anna Rahe, and Anna Rahe has been on her path for a long time. And literally, I think I was just telling her, she's ahead of her time, because we are now finally starting to hear about fascia. And now the more I delve into it, the more I realize there are so many people approaching it from a myriad of ways, right? There's so many different ways, and we're going to talk about that. But let me first introduce to you Anna, and then we're going to talk about her story, and then we're going to get into it. So, perfect. Anna Rahe, for the first I'm excited. I can't even talk right. Okay.
I'm silencing my phone.
Okay. For the past 25 years, Anna has delved deep into what did I write here? A liberating and empowering relationship with fascia so that as many people as possible can heal themselves with the proprietary tools that she has created. As the founder and CEO of and educator of GST Body, and I will stop right there and say you're clearly not Canadian, because in Canada, GSTs are goods and services.
Sales with tax, also in
right?
Australia.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I was like, GST, what is that? Anyways, Anna has spoken about holistic body care through fascia around the world, partnered with top athletes and surgeons, physicians, and celebrities. She's done it all. She's also been featured in various well-known publications. She also shares her information freely. So you can go to her website and her YouTube channel. So her YouTube channel is GST Body, where she teaches you things like why you should not do crunches, why they might not be very good for you, or how fascia relates to your chronic fatigue or your pain and all this stuff. She gives you amazing hints. You don't need her equipment, but I will tell you, I tried to buy your Rolex today, but you don't ship to Canada. I couldn't choose anything but the US. So I wanted to buy that
Yeah,
today,
we can
and I
do that on
couldn't
the other
do it.
side.
Okay, we'll figure
Yeah.
that out. So anyway, so she gets into so many things because literally fascia, I feel once I've discovered fascia on a more deeper level, it's like it's a key to all of it. Like I just released an interview on lymph and lymph flow and lymph drainage, but there's a deep connectedness with fascia. So we're going to go into all of that with Anna today. So Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. Oh, and she is frozen. Oh, and she's back. Did you hear that? Did you hear me say thank you?
Yeah, I heard thank you. I heard lymphatics, and I was like, this is really frustrating. It looks like I have full signal. I'm very sorry about this.
That's okay.
Okay, let's try this. And I paused some syncing of video. Apologize.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will help, but let's try it.
Okay, let's try. And if not, if we have to, we can reschedule, but I really want to talk to you now, but it might not work, but that's okay. That's okay. Let's just start and we'll see what we can do and we'll go from there. So far, so good. Yeah? You're catching
Okay,
everything? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, so far so good. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, thank you, Anna, for joining me today. I'm super stoked to talk to you. It's going to be so fun.
Thank you so much for having the conversation that I'm going to love to have with you. I can tell your enthusiasm's awesome.
I get a little excited. I do. Okay.
I love it.
First of all, you have a crazy story. Like you had the wisdom to search when I swear you were doing all the things that people were already doing, the yoga and the Pilates and all that stuff. So tell us how you even got into what you do. Please.
Yeah, good question. That's kind of weird. I was 18. It was a long time ago. I hate when I have to keep scrolling when they're asking your age and you have to keep scrolling back. I'm like, wow, I'm really scrolling pretty far. And I was 18 living in, right? Okay, yeah. I was living in San Francisco and I'd just come out of a pretty intense summer of kind of emotional healing from some trauma work with my childhood sexual abuse. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that these things collided where once I had gained some like access to my own health mentally, my body was like, it's safe to be able to express a lot of the stuff that was contained therein. So I don't think that was by chance, but I think there was a relationship. Looking back, I had some, stuff when I was little with my digestion. So there was some stuff happening before that, but 18 marks my journey of like, what the hell is happening to my body? Because I am in so much pain. But my symptoms were really very varied. They were really layered. I had things that were like, obvious muscle soreness and stiffness. And I would feel like I had done the hardest workout in my life where you can't put your hands over, your arms to get your shirt off or sit down on the toilet. Your quads hurt so bad. I would have more kind of serious conditions where I would have digestive issues and would like go down the rabbit hole of like, do I have IBS? Do I have Crohn's? Do I have some kind of a digestive problem? But my most serious kind of like symptoms were related to my lungs, actually. And I love to run. I used running as kind of like to channel my ADHD hyperactivity and calm me down, but I just felt good running. And I would run through Golden Gate Park, running up the hill to Golden Gate Park. And some days I would feel like I had been training for a marathon. I was just like super, like breath was powerful. I had, I felt very conditioned. And I would do the exact same run 2 to 3 days later. And I felt like a 10-pack-a-day smoker. And I'm like, what is wrong with this? And I do remember like when I was 13 running track and field and, having to go to a doctor and they would be like, you don't have asthma, but you need an inhaler. It's called athletic induced asthma. And, I had like multiple kind of just symptoms that all led to, I think, affect also my mental health, right? Which comes out to, I don't think that it alone depressed me, but I think that depression is definitely a part and parcel when you start learning how fascia is integrated into your brain health. It's kind of like expressing the same kind of pain and load that is happening in your tissues, but it's happening on the neurological level up in your brain. So I, at the time, was a certified Pilates teacher. I was a certified yogi. I was a certified fitness, trainer, and would help people. I was dancing professionally, and really trying to expand that career. And so you're right. It looked like from the outside to these like professionals that I was doing everything perfectly, and they could not find any source. My MRIs didn't show things, CAT scans, blood work, stools, tests, and I had tried it all. And I think that I got to a point where I was like, I just wanted someone to fix me. I didn't really care what the source was. I just wanted someone to fix me. And when that wasn't an option, I was like, fuck it. I'm going to figure this out because I can't live like this. I
Right.
cannot live like this. And so I first started I knew what fascia was. In the back recesses of my mind, I had taken a workshop from a rolfer as part of my Pilates certification. And we talked a lot about like more kind of emotional trauma and imprints and like posturing based upon fascial holding. So I was kind of aware of what fascia was, but I remember one night I was in my studio apartment. I had a reformer that I was teaching out of my house. And I remember kind of like just number one, nothing that my Pilates, like I had been studied at 3 different, very masterful certifications at this point. I was not a novice to Pilates. And the things that I did would flare up my symptoms. And so I kind of became skeptical. And I'm like, why, when I do this, I get a flare up like this? And so I started thinking analytically. I kind of tell people that I have a Rubik's Cube brain naturally. So it's not like a far stretch for you to get into the connective tissue system, which is all about connection and finding the right combination of things to fix it. So my brain is kind of ripe for what fascia is. But I remember just being like, it can't be muscles. I can do this, this, and this. It can't be bones. It's not that, da, da, da. I'm like, is there something else that I'm missing? And in the recesses of my mind, it was like, could this be fascia that I'm dealing with? And so all of a sudden, I think I kind of started in a traditional way where I'd like lay on these balls and it was excruciating. But as I relaxed into them, I would feel kind of this weird warming and spreading or a melting. And I'm like, this is really interesting. So I would spend 2 to 3 hours, no joke, 2 to 3 hours a night. I'd come home from my dance rehearsals and I would just lay there and try to mend what felt like I'd been broken in my dance class. And I would kind of like watch and observe, and I kind of became my own laboratory. And what I noticed was, number one, the relief that I found was profound, but it was not permanent, right? Like I'd have to lay on the balls every night. And I was like, I can't do this. I want to have children. I want to go and have a career. I cannot give 3 to 4 hours a night to try to heal or at least feel better. I didn't know if it was permanent. I just knew that I had to do it in order to feel better. And so it was one nondescript night when I'm like, so what is the ball doing to my back? What is the feeling? And I kind of just studied it in this kind of deep trance meditation, and I'd watch it, and it was like, it felt like a stone. The roller was like a stone being thrown in the water, and it felt like my tissue would kind of spread out in rings. And I was like, I wonder if I could do that on my own. Like, could I do that without the impetus of a roller? And so the answer was yes. It became the nucleus of what GST is. The focus of GST is really about remodeling the body. And the reason that it's focused on motion is the only significant way to dent this highly sophisticated system in the body, that you can go to massage, you can go to acupuncture. There's really amazing benefits that all tap into fascia, but movement has like the most influence because it's the most exposure that fascia is faced with that conditions it, right?
Okay.
Did I block out?
No, I can hear you.
Did I get blocked
it's
out?
fine. The video's not sync. No, you're good. I can hear you. You're good. As long as I can hear you, we're good.
Okay.
Okay.
I just got a message that it was. Okay, great. So, movement became kind of the medium. I would go to all of these like massage and fascial therapists and acupuncturists, and I learned a lot about what fascia wants and what it does, kind of like this biological study of this organic matter that behaves very differently to anything else that we know. And so when I started looking at it from manual therapy, that's kind of where it was mostly studied, right? Rolfing and Heller work, and it hadn't really gotten a lot of attention in movement yet. And what I started seeing was that the stuff that was happening manually lacked permanence. And since I didn't want to be crippled my whole life, I was like, I have to start refining things and figuring out how can this, I wanted a new body, right? And what's interesting about fascia is that it can remodel, and it literally from cell to cell, I started doing my deep dive into all of these techniques that would make rapid change and make permanent change. And when I started down that hole, I was like, I'm not doing anything else. And I kept coming back up and bumping against, because I was a mover, I started bumping up against the biomechanics of the human body as it's taught in every discipline, right? So you have physical therapy, yoga, Pilates, everybody uses a model of biomechanics that actually elicits bad things for fascia.
Wow.
Like inappropriate movements that clog and are almost, I would say, pathological to what fascia needs. And so on this one hand, movement's extremely influential, but if you do the wrong type of movements and the wrong sciences, all of a sudden you're actually damaging fascia, kind of like poor eating is bad for your chemistry set, right? The nutritional aspect of a biochem really messes you up health-wise, and bad movement, junk movement, like junk food, messes up your fascial system, and that has far-reaching physiological implications. That, as you noted, is like affects your digestive system, your endocrine system, because fascia is integrated into every other body system you have. Every organ, every vessel, every cell is wrapped and coated and contoured in the connective tissue system, which is comprised of fascia.
Right, which I always thought of it just like a cellophane wrapper, but when I watched, there's some like the living fascia, I think is one of the videos. There's a couple of videos out there, and it's freaking crazy. It's this crazy web, and it all moves all over the place, and it slides, and it's just it's the living matrix within. But is it on top of it? It's not on top though, is it? Like it's inside.
It's integrated into your skin. So it literally goes from your skin to your soul, everywhere.
Everywhere.
And
So
what makes it the most fascinating is actually that it's not a solid matter. It's only 30% fiber and it's 70% water. And this is where most people are we need to shift the paradigm. Even fascia people will say it's water, it's fluid, but they're still applying solid biomechanics to a fluid substance that responds like a water to gravitational pull. And so you look at fascia and it's a gel water. There's a new evolving and very cutting edge science about this new state of water. And it's not vapor, it's not liquid. Well, fascia it's kind of like the same type of gel consistency or crystalline consistency of that you find in like aloe vera plants, right? So all of a sudden, hydration becomes a really big issue for your fascia. Movement is, the way you do it is really important because it has to allow for there to be production of water as well as movement of water. And a lot of our principles are isolating and dehydrating, right? Of movement is dehydrating.
So some are saying that fascia is actually how we hydrate the body through the movement of water. But so how does the water get to so you consume the water? How are you getting how are you hydrating the fascia itself? Like how does that work? Do you know?
So I would make a clarification. I think I heard you well. Sorry, it's a little in and out.
Yeah.
So fascia is water. It's not hydrated by fascia. We're not fascia is a matrix, is like this nylon webbing, is like this very deep spider web, gel spider web that wraps around everything. Its hydration qualities are not its greatest facility. It's just that its consistency as having water is essential for its operations. Okay. So for example, if you take dry ramen noodles and you try to stretch it out, if you try to pass veins through it, if you try to run lymph through dried ramen, there's no movement. You're actually locking up against this fibrotic noodle-like lock that has no agility and mobility.
Right.
So you want to hydrate it. You want to make sure that it stays in this state of elasticity, of fluidity, and it helps to get hydration that you eat and that you drink into your cells. It's an irrigation system, but movement is what facilitates. It's almost like, have you ever heard, it's called fluid dynamics in physics.
Yeah, well,
And
I was going to say we have to talk about chemistry, and that's my background. So yeah, so fluid. That's what I was going to say. We have to look at fluid dynamics is when we're talking
that's
about
right,
that,
instead
right?
of solid mechanics.
Right.
And fluid dynamics works on a pump, okay? A pump-like action. For listeners, the easiest way to understand the most simple form of fluid dynamics, there's tons of different laws, and right? But if I simplify it in terms of biological function, it's like a syringe that pushes and pulls water through the fibers, and fascia is organized in tubes. And then these nanotubes, they're very small, and those things that look like spider webs are actually like these microscopic tubes. And then the tubes build to larger like tubes that wrap around your muscles into envelopes, and the bigger tubes that wrap around your intestines. And so all of a sudden, we're not a big stick of arms and levers and pulleys. We're actually this really gorgeous, like push and pull hydraulic system. And fascia is the nucleus of that mechanism. Fascia is the thing that is like facilitating expansion and compression, moving things through us. And that's why it's optimized. But what's really interesting, another thing that's interesting about fascia, I think it's the most significant part, is that it's our energetic system. So as you have biochemistry and you have your physics, we're electrochemical carbon life forms. And our energetics, what keeps us online and functioning, cells reproducing and all of this, is this combination of electrochemical activity. Well, fascia is that the electro side that's moving the chemicals through the body and interacting and keeping, it's almost like, I call it the smart grid. And if you know anything about the world smart grid, the global smart grid, is that smart grid technology allows the user to participate in the movement of its energy, of generating and distributing and moving its energy. And so fascia, think about it like this, almost like a conduit of energies from the lighter frequency that's happening where your heart is pounding and you get your EKG, the electromagnetic field of your heart, next to your lungs that are expanding and contracting, putting off an electrical output. Those things don't interrupt because fascia's there modulating on the backside, being like, oh, there's a lot of power coming from here. Let's share it and distribute it. And so it becomes this distributive system that is keeping everything in this homeostasis and keeping your energetics online. And when you have unhealthy fascia, it literally is like kind of a clog in your artery, right? But it's on the electromagnetic scale then, rather than just the tubular flow of blood flow, right?
Right, but it will affect blood flow in the end. It'll affect flow of everything. That's the thing. I'm doing a class on flow actually next week. And the thing is, it affects all flow. It's going to affect, like, okay, so I'm obsessed with figuring out what's going with my lymph. But when I discovered, like, because I did skin rolling, for example, when I was pregnant, so I didn't get stretch marks, which worked beautifully. So I wasn't adhered. But now I'm like, I realized, well, I should do that everywhere. So I started skin rolling. Now I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but holy crap, my legs were just bound up. Like it was like I might as well try to skin roll this table here. It was ridiculous. And now I have a lot more movement, but there's still places that it's really adhered. But then I tend to swell sometimes in my legs. But if it's adhered, how are things going to flow? How are your nerve impulses going to flow? How's your blood going to flow? Like everything.
Everything
Right?
is based upon the condition of your fascia.
I just
Your nerves fire differently based upon how they're venerating
Right.
through the fascia. It's amazing.
And how many neurologists are looking at fascia health? How many like cardiologists are looking at fascia health, right? Exercise
That's what I write
physiologists.
in my book. I said, what I propose is that this is actually the new lens. This is how the gastroenterologist is going to treat digestive issues, is that there are movements that you can do with your viscera and command and control, and it frees up your digestive system. And that's what healed my thing. And I had tons of backup and lymphatic drainage issues and edema. And I was 18, it was disgusting. And I was like, why do I just retain water like crazy?
Right.
Well, because.
And
right?
so how long did it take before you resolved your physical symptoms?
So
And
that's a really
how
good
did it
question.
affect you mentally as well? Like I would think it's like it's going to change the whole picture.
Everything. So I had some really, so fascia is deeply layered, right? So it's not just like, and this is what comes down to how you treat it, right? Lots of people do superficial fascia, which is this rolling. It's very superficial. It's kind of like putting on lotion, and it's good for you and it's necessary, but it's almost like kind of putting on sunscreen. It only protects to a certain amount. It doesn't really prevent collagen problems and like deeper, skin stuff. So you have to look at the depth. And so my first transformation was quite radical. In fact, within 3 months, I looked like I had lost about 25 pounds. My mom picked me up from the airport. I started most of my fascia work, my very initial, in August when we got back from Australia in 2001. And by Christmas, my mom was in tears. She's like, you have an eating disorder again, and I have to take you to the hospital. And I'm like, no, no, no. I had just
Wow.
transformed my body so significantly that I looked very, very different. Now I was exercising and it wasn't weight loss. This is why this was also very interesting, is that the scale that I was standing on didn't show major fluctuations. The proportions were so different. Within 3 years, my leg length had grown about 1.75 inches. And the only reason I do that,
No.
yes.
Your leg length? I always
Yes.
joke that I want 2 extra inches and I want it all on
Yeah.
my legs. I can do it?
You can do it. You can do it. And that happened because I had gotten a gift, a professional Italian road bike made by one of my, kind of rich clients. And he's like into cycling. He's like, I want to build you a bike. You would love cycling. So he built me a bike. 2 years later, the bike frame didn't fit me anymore. And I was like,
Wow.
that's a bummer. So I ended up, he traded it back and they did another one for me, which was fine. But so that was a structural thing. So superficially, rearranging fascial structures can happen relatively quickly, that so much so that within about 7 months, remodeling, if you're really seriously and you have very specific techniques, and we'll get to that too, because not all movement triggers fascial change, right? Just releasing fascia helps with pain and helps with all this stuff, but that's not restructuring. That's not remodeling.
Okay.
It's a totally different. It's almost like going into an esthetician who's rubbing your face and getting good lymph and, cleaning stuff from the superficial, or going to a plastic surgeon where they go in and they actually rearrange where the attachments are happening and where those things are embedded at the source of attachment. Anyway, it's a crude but rudimentary kind of analogy, because fascia has, like you said, so many inroads, right?
Right.
So there's like, what do I do daily? What do I want to do to really fix some serious problems?
Right.
That's the scope that you can look at. So 3 months, I had enough weight loss that it's freaked my mom out. It wasn't weight loss, it was size. It was proportion changes.
Okay.
So that can be quick. Then you have structural changes. And I would say that I did a lot of plate shifting that changes proportions pretty rapidly. But then there's deep and dimensional attachments, which is shape oriented. And that has taken me a lifetime long of figuring out how to like change attachments of my fascia at the back of my rib cage, right? That is actually creating the kind of pull that neurologically pulls on the right side of my face. Those kind of things are more deeply layered, because I think, and this is all a growing science, right? So I've spent 25 years studying empirically and then going to the books and being like, they're not even talking about this. Here's what I know. And then they're not talking about this yet. So it was kind of this like hodgepodge. But there are fascia things that you're born with, like genetic fascial things. And I think that those are a whole nother category of predispositions that take longer. And what's interesting is, so because the fascial net is so deeply wired to your nervous system net, the network of your neurology, you can do some pretty significant changes, but it just takes time because of the wiring and the neuroplasticity laws that govern. You're not a puddle, right? There's like specific guidelines that the nervous and like your body has that are like, we don't want you to go in messing up too much because we need to keep you anyway. So that's kind of the long answer of what's possible with fascia is really incredible, where we're talking about like I think it's interesting from a social perspective that the things that get people's attention are really superficial, like the fascia blaster. Of course, humans have to start learning from this like thing that like targets something superficial. And I'm like, but the end result of what you can do with your fascia is like going to the moon
Right.
or going to Mars. It's that
Well,
profound.
I
And
think
so,
you have to appeal to the vanity, because the thing is, say somebody has stuck fascia and they've got really cellulite legs. For me, it's not about the cellulite is a message. It's a message to me. It's an indicator
Mhm.
that there's
It's there.
blockage, that there's flow,
That's right.
there's stagnation. So it's not
That's
about,
right.
so the reason I would want to get rid of cellulite is because something's not optimal,
That's right. But you want to
right?
get rid of cellulite from the structural component, not
Yes,
the superficial.
of course, of
Right.
course.
So,
Yes, but now
but
I
I think that it's
understand
just
it
interesting that
totally differently.
our socialization of fascia would follow a similar trajectory, right? Humans' minds have to conceive this before they can
Yeah.
conceive deep.
Well,
We
yeah.
have to go
Yeah.
broad before we can go into the heart of what something is.
Totally.
That's all I'm
Totally.
saying about that, is that it follows how humans learn, how we behave. It's almost like a psychological snapshot of, here's this deep mystery of our humanness, and we start at the superficial. So we can,
And we do. And I guess that's how you first see it. And not everybody is curious enough. And it's frustrating. Like,
right,
you must be
right.
so frustrated knowing what you know and being in it for so long, seeing the profundity of it. Like when I created my program on conscious pregnancy and parenting, like 13 years ago, people don't want to freaking, I'm like, oh, I did all the work. You just here, look. And
Yeah.
nobody wants to know. And it's frustrating, right? Because
So
it's
frustrating.
profound. Okay, so you mentioned the fascia blaster. So there's blocks, there's vibrating tools, there's manual manipulation, there's movement, there's skin rolling. Like, do they all have their place? Is it something like, do you only focus on the movement? Are you doing other things? Like, you must have such supple skin. Like, for me, I feel like I need to do the skin rolling because I'm so adhered and stuck. But could I?
You can think about them like they're all touching different sides of the elephant, right? It's kind of like religion, where one religion's touching the tusk and describing God like this, and one person's touching it over
Right.
here. And so I think a lot of it comes down to what are they trying to target, right? Consistency. Are you just trying to help with the consistency of fascia, right? That means like, is it hydrated and does it have glide and does it have movement? That's one thing. And a lot of these techniques are great for those types of access, right? You lay down, you turn your nervous system down more into parasympathetic mode, and you start allowing fascia to uncontract. Because right now, most people in our modern life have contractility in their fascia. It's over contracted. And that's from a state of being in a state of stress. So things like blocking teaches the body how to literally allow for the fascial contraction to release and let out. That's one type of releasing. Rolling helps to create so there's many different sensors in fascia. It's a communication system. And so it has, I think it's like 7-to-1 or 10-to-1 sensors to any other type of body tissue, meaning that it is more packed with sensory information than any other body. It used to be that muscles were seen to have the most, and now fascia is. So in order to activate fascia and get it interested, you actually really have to stimulate the different receptors in fascia. And different receptors respond to different stimuli. There's 5 different mechanical receptors. That's one type of mechanical, how it receives mechanical load. So when you shake the fascia, you're hitting I think it's the Golgi receptor, or I don't have them all memorized, but the Golgi receptor is, or the long stretch, so there's all these different sensations. And so everybody literally is like, these are really good. And it's a good thing. You want variety, just like you don't want to eat one type of food. It's like, oh, there's vitamin K, there's vitamin D, there's vitamin. And we're so locked into like what's good and bad and right and wrong. And fascia's like, guys, just give me more diversity and dynamics and more access to what I need. So vibrating is great. Does it structurally change things? No. Does it feel good and allow for there to be loosening in the tissue? Yeah. Does it help to kind of like break up initial like light amounts? I think it's not letting me talk. Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. You're moving funny, but I can hear you. Yeah, you're good.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So it can have all, it'll supply certain things and not all things. And that's why I said that movement becomes paramount, because movement exposes. So there's these certain things that fascia, like, that are consistent. Fascia needs a lot of load. It responds to gravitational pull and load, stress loads. And it was designed, it's part of your gravitational suspension system to help you, like, protect against, like sun has different rays, like UV rays and UVB, and there's all these. Okay, so you get too many of those UV loads and you get burned. Fascia is a very similar comparison, where if you get too much loading in too many ways, it kind of burns your fascia, and you can get fibrosis and ossification. And so all of a sudden, our really heavy hit and high reps, and even if they're low weight, is burning through your fascia, right? So you have to kind of look at movement supplies all of the right ingredients that allows you to do some really significant and multi-dimensional impacts. It's not just cardiovascular and toning, right? We think about movement so much from an exercise fitness base that we don't really open the mind to, like, what does movement really do? What is movement beyond our idea of, like, counting steps and, hitting our reps, and right? There's enough
counting steps. Seriously. Yeah.
So
does the movement address all the inputs that the fascia needs to be the fascia, like every single one of them? It does.
That's right. It hits every single one. And one of the most important one is repetition and duration. If you want to change your fascia, think about your fascia like a shoreline. Every time you load it, it's like a wave hitting the shoreline. It's going to contour and change and adapt. Cells lay down where there's, like, good load, and it overlays down where there's bad load. And if there's no load, it dies off. So cells are remodeling based upon loads for fascia. And so depending upon the type of load, the exposure, fascia is either going to rebuild and remodel healthy tissue, or atrophy and have no tissue strength and ability. So it's regulating this kind of system and building not just your muscles, but also your organs, and helping, like, cellular reproduction on a lot of different levels. So when you think about this, the thing that the human body does that's exposed to the most is load. Even if you're just sitting in your chair, hunched over your computer, your body is stationary and exposed to load. And so this is why our bodies are being crippled by sitting. It's called glycation. We don't have to go into that for your listeners, but it's your body's remodeling according to its influences, same as your nervous system. And so all of a sudden, where you're moving and the duration, like, you can't go to massage enough to have force and duration and repetition to make positive changes to the negative impacts of our daily lives. It's just impossible. And so the greatest influence will win. So if you're going out and doing 1,000,000 reps, right? I just am reading this book called The Anxious Generation, and he talks about this in terms of neurological feed points of the brain to the children with, like, live Instagram. And he's like, the parents are like, why can't we help get our kids out of this? And they're like, because you're dealing with 1 billion data points hitting your kid's mind every minute, compared to yours 30, hits the nervous system. You cannot compete. And so you look at it, and it's like, this is the problem with fascia, is that fascia is being damaged at a rate that is much more severe than what is being healed. And so all of a sudden, we have to make our movement matter. We have to make our movement really significant, because it's the greatest influencer, even and/or lack of movement, right? You're still being hit by load, but it's static sitting load that's like compressive. And if your tissue isn't gliding regularly, it starts to stick together.
Yes, well, I know that. It's crazy. It gets really sticky, and you have to constantly work at it. So does anybody have, like, how would anybody have naturally healthy fascia? That's one question. Second question is, can we, just by the regular daily movements of our life, like the way we walk, can we adjust that to nourish our fascia? Because even the things that you're just doing, never mind just doing an extra regime.
Right.
Can you affect your fascia?
So there's two things that work in our favor. Let me ask you, I'll answer the 3 questions.
Okay.
The first is just like anybody, all biological variants have different kinds of fascia. So there are people who walk around with pretty healthy fascia, even despite their lifestyles, right? What about those people who can eat tons of steak and never affect their cholesterol? It's a biological, like, mystery. You get to have good genes or bad genes. You're not predetermined, but that's a whole nother conversation. So here we go. There's good fascia and bad fascia. And I think that there are people who are born with damage to their fascia, pathological things already in their genes, and there's ones that are not. When you take the whole scope of, I would say, especially the US or modern living, that could be Britain and Canada and just modern lifestyle, damage is probably by 20. I just was reading an article that by 20 is when glycation, which is one of the greatest toxifiers to our tissues, starts to set in naturally. And then it's advanced and sped up. The damage is sped up by sitting or by aggressive working out. So those two extremes, right? Fascia says, I hate extremes. Give me moderate movement with these qualities, these nutrient values. Give me this kind of movement. And then that's all I need. You don't need to go out and do a special thing to set it aside and do a special workout. But you do need to know what are the ingredients that the fascia needs. Number one, it needs regular dosing. We call it microdosing of like good force. You sit all day. If that's what you do, you need to be up every 45 to 60 minutes for at least a minute and a half. And you need to do, while during that time, you need to do these supplemental things. And it's not walking. Walking is great for your health heart. It's great for, coordination as you age. It's great for bone density. Okay. But it lacks range of motion. It's called a pedestrian style motion. Okay. And so one of the things fascia loves is very wide ranges of motion, because think about it. If you are a pump, the farther you pull matches how strong you can push. And fascia needs this like constant oxygenation, like your lungs are healthier, the more they can expand and the more that they can exhale. It's a spectrum. And so our bodies, most of our movement are too pedestrian. They're like this. And fascia doesn't get to actually activate. It's not pull, yawn, stretch, and push. So if you look around, if you're going to do that 30-second or a minute and 30-second, add a ton of traction, add a ton of compression, and add a ton of rotation. So what we talk about is simplifying it for fascia, is that fascia needs really 3 dynamic movements: the pull of the syringe, the compression of the syringe, that's like the push and pull of the fluid, and then you wring it out. And we do not do enough rotation, we do not do enough traction, and we do not do enough compression. Everything that we do is like breathing shallow, right? Our movements are shallow, and fascia is like, oh my gosh, I can't get rid of this toxin with just like this like tiny meat, right? Give me something that feels good. And you look at kids and they do it. They do it.
Yeah.
So fascia is kind of rewiring our understanding of motion by, there's very distinct things that fascia needs that can be nutrient rich and that will get all of these things cellularly. If you don't want to like restructure your body, fine. That's like the deepest level of science that then can build everything else up. You don't have to do that, what I did, to have the benefits. In fact, if you just kind of like microdose your movements and add these 3 components in, and you need to turn around and I like to talk about it like this, but fascia says, make life your jungle gym. When we were out foraging and hunting and gathering, we would hang from trees and scamper up hills, and we would squat. That's the primal squat, is the compression. Then we would hang from our trees and swing. And then we would do our like hunting and moving and gathering. And it was just much more dynamic. And so we can take those elements and say, okay, to simplify it for the person who's just wanting this top level, get these 3 elements. It's like vitamin C keeps you from having scurvy. Vitamin D keeps you from having, right? There's these elements that we need. And so I feel like that lightens the load. It's like, I can give some really great benefits that will keep my fascia healthy. Fascia has to be hydrated. It has to glide. It has to be individuated. The fibers have to be able to move without pulling on everything else, right? Think about unhealthy fascia, like too much gel in your hair. It's like just locked down. And so we need to be able to kind of get those. And that happens with repetitive during the day. Go home and then roll out at night. It's nice and relaxing. That's a nice way to hydrate. But you see how rolling doesn't actually stretch and move the pump of fascia, right? It doesn't move the pump action of fascia. So It's just a matter of education. It's like helping people liken it to things that they've already known. They've heard a million things about nutrition. We have evolved our nutritional ideas for the last 100 years, trying to get back to something that is going to fix this epidemic of disease and and obesity in our thing. And it's like, if I can just slide in that fascia is very similar. It needs like similar things, like too much of something is really bad for it. Right? Not enough is not good for it. And we tend to think in extremes. And so we go hot yoga and burn the shit out of it, even though we're like, yoga's good for us. But you're like, it teaches you to lock your core. It's doing too much repetitive motion. Like Bikram and stuff is too repetitive. Fascia starts to be like, I don't want to adapt. Fascia is extremely adaptive. And if you do the same action over and over again, 60 million reps, and you have your routine, fascia's like, okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Your muscles may get strong. Your bones are experiencing load. It's not that it's not valuable, but it's not targeting fascia, right? And if your muscle is over contracting, fascia is under animating. That's a true. And so you can actually lock out fascial animation, which is essential for your health, if you over contract and over compress your muscles.
Right. Nobody's even talking about this. This is so cool. So I have a quick story. So about a month ago, my SI joint went out and I was sleeping on the hard floor with the yoga mat. I was in so much pain, but I was telling my husband, I'm like, you know what? This is cool. This is good. I know this is temporary. I couldn't figure it out. I went for cranio. I helped it for a little bit. It would kind of work out for a little bit, but I had watched a video of yours a few days prior about the pendulums with like swinging your legs like a pendulum, right? So Friday morning, I'm out working at the shop, and I've said to my husband, I am struggling today because usually I could put stuff on and at least it wouldn't be painful. And so I just started swinging my legs like pendulums, and it was getting worse and worse that day. And I was just I was like letting my arms swing, and I was twisting back and forth my upper torso, and then doing that with my legs. Within an hour, the pain was gone permanently. Done.
Oh my gosh.
Done.
Great.
Yes, I know. So I didn't go to the chiro. I didn't, I was doing some fascia stuff where I was just doing more of a melting, and I was even trying with melting my feet, and I was doing different things to see, because I know things are stuck in different places. But until I did that, and it was just simple swinging.
Isn't that amazing?
Fixed it.
No.
Yeah.
My journey went so deep into it that sometimes it's so nice to hear that story. Thank you, because it helps to pull me out and be like, this, it really can be simple. I wanted to restructure. So I went into like and I thought the only way to really do fascia is to go into and it's not. Like fascia is really forgiving, right? Like the rest of your body, it's prone towards vitalism. So if you can do these simple things, and literally that was my experience. I'd be like, so I still do GST every single day, not for work, but for my body, for my pleasure. I cannot, and you'll find if you keep doing it, it's like my number one thing is like, I can't actually live without this. I cannot live without this because it makes me feel so much better just being able to do this. And we do, like GST on the surface is movement. But when I was remodeling, it looked like I was just lying on my back, and it looked very similar to like blocking. And I would like, just lay on things and push into things, because what I was really doing was manipulating the fascial action on the inside. So this is something that we don't have to talk about today, but it is something that your listener might find hopeful, is that a missing piece of a lot of other therapies is a passive recipient, where fascia will melt just by applying pressure to it. That's what my first experience was, right?
Yes.
Of lying on the rollers. It'll just melt because it's distributing. That's its number one thing, is distribute load to metabolize stress in the body. It is all about metabolizing your loads and getting it out. And so that's great, but that's not the end of the story. Fascia has the ability to contract. And this is something that that was that moment where I was like, is there something I can do where the roller's not doing it to me, where I can actually control it?
Right.
And there's a cell in fascia that contracts like a muscle. Researchers are still kind of up in arms about what's the significance of it, because it's a lighter contraction. Like a muscle can like squeeze and you can feel the poundage, and it, it's like, yes, I can tighten my muscle. Fascia has that, but it's a lighter, it's almost like instead of a 10 decibel contraction, it's like a 1.5 to 2 decimal contraction. And that's what's happening on the unconscious nervous system level, when you're melting, fascia goes squeeze, push, squeeze, push. And what I discovered is that what if I could control the squeeze and the push? And sure enough, the way that I could contract a muscle would determine how the fascia would metabolize it. And that's the hope for my bigger hope for people is that if you can like start to contract and control those impulses of fascia, the way that your muscles contract, that's a game changer. Because then you are directing your health. You don't have to lie on the foam roller to always get the relief you need.
You could just do that where you are.
That's right. You do it right where you are, anytime, anywhere. I brush my teeth and I can flush this like this. And this what comes down to changing our biomechanics. So I'll give this example to your listeners. We are taught to teach a solid core. Most of our body ailments, aches and pains and body problems is because our abs are too weak. And this comes from the principle of a solid body. We look at something that's soft and supple and we're like, ooh, that's a misdesign. We need to make that rigid. But really, we should look at the human body and be like, that is some intelligent design. Why is there no bone in this area? Why is there no skeletal structures in this one area? Everywhere else, there's skeletal protection, but not here, even though they're vital organs. And one of the major reasons is because how movement and motility, it's the most like volatile area for multiple movements happening at the same time. And you cannot have insynchronicity or asynchronicity in your digestion, else it creates a whole problem in your microbiome. Talk about that later. So back to this issue of being able to just control that thing means that all of a sudden you're able to regulate and control way more deeply this contractile thing. And when I discovered this, all of a sudden the core was like, oh my gosh, I actually have to contract my muscles in a certain sequence in order to not interrupt fascial flow. Let me say that one more time. I need to open my core, not contract and hold my abs. I need to contract muscles in a sequence in order to keep fascia moving with flow. If I tighten and hold my muscles, I am locking up fascia's ability. So think about it like this. When you're like trying to shake out your sheet on your bed, let's say you're making your bed, the muscle action is your hand flicking your sheet, but fascia is the ripple of the sheet that's laying out on your bed. And so if you interrupt the handshake, you're actually impinging how fascia is moving the energy from your action. And this is what we do wrong in our biomechanics is that we are taught to tighten everything, hold, make rigid, rather than, oh my gosh, how can I let the fascia move? And so all of a sudden there's a way to contract your muscles that frees up fascia too. And that's the key that's the deeper level of total body health. And if you move, like lift your ribs, just lift your ribs and you will improve your digestion and probably lose 5 pounds. No joke. Lift your rib cage. Lift your rib cage.
Well, and it's interesting. I tried to do one of your things where you're like dropping your diaphragm and I don't even remember how it takes coordination and focus. It's like, Jesus, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about because I don't even know what that means to feel, right? Like, it's like, okay, how am I going to, I think it was dropping the diaphragm, like one of the ones you're
lifting the ribs,
breathing into your neck and like wow, like how in the world did you figure this stuff out? It's crazy, but it takes real focus and concentration.
It takes intention.
It does.
It does. But look, all of life takes intention.
Oh, I'm not complaining.
No, like, right. So, but this is what I'm saying to you. You're a coach. I always take this. If you want to live a mindless life, go for it. This is not for you. Fascia is not for you. You're not going to find this interesting.
Right.
If you're a conscious liver and you're like, I want to find answers or solutions, or then you're like, I want to learn this. And this is the state of the human body. Our bodies have stopped moving so long ago, century from the Industrial Revolution. Yeah. That our biomechanics are not natural anymore. Right. We are not moving the way we were supposed to move. So even when you try to go out and move correctly, you're so atrophied. Your movement is so anorexic that you're not moving well. Right. And that's why you have to use conscious programming. You have to fix the mainframe computer to be like, oh my gosh, my ribs and my diaphragm don't separate. That's one of the number one physiological motions that actually regulates your parasympathetic to sympathetic nervous system. And if you don't have that tissue movement, you're in a constant state of adrenal stress. So go try to like talk therapy. That's good. Go and try to take medicine. That's good. Go do your antidepressants. But if your tissue is not gliding, your adrenals are held captive and they're constantly secreting. Even if you're trying to approach it from the brain, your adrenals aren't responding.
That's
Right?
so amazing because I seriously, I'm talking to people. People are so freaking anxious these days. They have so much anxiety and they just want to. And the thing is, I tell people nothing changes until you change. And you want to grab something off the shelf, and maybe it'll be a crutch until. But what I love about this is that it's you and you do it, and it's not depending on that thing outside of yourself. And we have that power to just. We have that power within us, and it just takes the time and the willingness and the curiosity. But people are so unwilling these days, right? They're so comfortable in their comfort zones, but they're really not.
Curiosity. I love that you said curiosity. Can you hear me?
I can. I know we're breaking up right now. Yes.
That's right. Isn't that funny? We are comfortable being.
Yeah.
I wanted to get the recording. Sorry. I love two things you said.
Okay.
Curiosity. Humans need curiosity. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
I love that you said curiosity, because curiosity is what motivates us to a different place, right? And that's the other thing that I learned about fascia, which is what you said about people are comfortable being uncomfortable. Why? Right? Like, get uncomfortable with your discomfort. Like, that should be a symptom to you. It should be a sign to you that something is wrong. And instead of being afraid of it, like, go into it. It said, and I learned this early, target my pain, my fear, not avoid it.
Yeah.
I had to actually purposefully push into it before it would release.
Yes.
Fascia teaches you to like push. Pain is not good or bad. It's just information. It's just information. Get the information and get curious about it. Like, why do I have this constantly? The question of why is to a kid. It's like stimulating to the brain. The brain goes, oh, I like that question. Ask it again. Oh, I like that question. Ask it again. And pretty soon your brain starts to be more curious about this and will allow you to like bypass all this other static interruption that just kills us. It kills us from being able to change.
I love it. I love it. And the only way, and I love how you talk about you have to go through it. You have to, because people avoid their discomforts. Like the only way around is through people, whether it be a traumatic experience, your physical body, your pain, and it's all related. And it's all related anyway. So you're going to achieve all these amazing resolutions on so many different levels. And the fascia is such a huge part of that. That's why I'm so excited about it, because it links everything. It's like the commonality through everything. It's just, okay, so I know you have to go. I think we have to do another conversation. Hopefully you're okay with that. And we have a better connection as well. But okay, 3 tips right now that people can do, and then how they can contact you, what you offer, all that stuff. And then we're going to get into some more next time.
Okay, awesome. So here's 3 things that I want you to do. I want you to wake up every morning and start your morning with this amazing yawn that focuses on traction. You're going to, while your coffee percolates or while you're waiting in line at Starbucks, you're going to find a surface to pull off of. Okay. And this is going to look like your toes against the baseboard of your kitchen sink, your hands in grabbing onto the kitchen sink. You're going to bend your knees and you're going to sit your butt back and try to rip your kitchen sink off your wall. And you're just going to hang there. And as you hang there, try to create space in between each vertebra and in between each pelvis and shoulders, and try to expand the pull and let the fascia really, really lengthen and pull that out. And then you're going to drop your butt to the floor and you're going to practice cultivating your compression. So keep hanging. You want it to hang off of traction. Most people have lost the ability to primal squat. That's the shape of your body when you're like kneeling down by a fire, or when you look at people in third world countries still working in the rice paddies or working in the fields, they can primal squat. And this is one of the most healthy for digestion, for hip health, for lungs, for spine strength, cranial caudal strength. So you're hanging off the sink, or you're hanging off a handicap ramp outside of the Starbucks, or you're hanging off the edge of your window at a gas station. You're hanging. You're going to look at places to let life be your jungle gym. And then you want to take really long stretches with your body, and then you want to make really short shapes hanging, still hang. When you're in the stair rail, walk the stairs as you go back up to your work from lunch and hang off the stair rails in your office building. Go to the toilet, and before you wash your hands, hang off the sinks. Those are all very strong. You can't rip them off the wall. If you're going through a toilet stall, do the, dead man hang, where you grab onto the stall and you hang like you're hanging off of a jungle gym. Traction and compression. And then look for the third way. You said three movements: traction, compression, and then start rotating your spine. Start rotating your torso. And my caveat to this is pelvis. Think about those two structures like the top and bottom of a plastic Easter egg, okay? And you need to keep those two plastic Easter eggs as far pulled apart and as far expanded as possible. And so you're going to kind of twist your spine, and it becomes like the action of a washing machine, where the tumbler inside starts to exfoliate your lungs on your rib cage. It starts to get your organs to viscerally motile or move inside of you. And rotation has huge benefits to brain health, to visceral health, to cognitive function, to diaphragmatic lung expansion. And so that's another one to do. Those are the three elemental movement patterns that fascia needs to wash, hydrate, and detoxify and remain like in peak condition. And you need to do that anytime you start feeling the need to yawn. I think about this a lot. So fascia feeds a reflex to the brain, to the same area that has all your other reflexes: thirst reflex, hunger reflex, sexual reflex. The sexual desire goes to the same area of the brain. And fascia has a reflex that is supposed to initiate this desire to move. The desire, think about fascia kind of like a snow globe. And when we sit all day, the snow becomes compressed and static, and that's what can create ossification and glycation that leads to ossification. So you just get up and you shake that snow globe, and it's a world of difference. It seems very silly, but if you can do that now, once you start to reignite the reflex, you won't need to remember as much. We like to make things super easy, right? Because life is so stressful. Let's just make it easy. Well, the body knows that and is like, you have a million things happening. Let me just give you a reflex, but you have to start the reflex.
Right.
You have to initiate it. And so do that by looking around and being like, I'm going to choose 5 places in my workday and 5 places at home that I can just kind of play around and be like, I'm going to cut this carrot for my kid. I'm just going to hang off the sink before I do it. People who have pain, it's much easier to initiate the reflex. And here's why. Pain is the alarm. You'll be like, oh my gosh, my sciatica is coming back. I've only been driving 30 minutes to and from work. I got to get out at the gas station. And I'm just going to, while my gas is filling, I'm going to hang off the back of my window. I'm just going to go and use my bumper to do a primal squat. But you have to kind of like work it in as a reminder and listen to your body. And then your body is going to start being like, dude, you need to yawn. Dude, go over here and just take 2 seconds. And all of a sudden you'll start to crave it. Fascia has this craving. And if you move the way fascia loves, it's endorphin based. Muscles are adrenal based, and fascia is endorphin based. And we can go into the science of that more later. But what you want to know is all the application is, even if you're feeling stressed, it doesn't have to be a physical pain. If you're feeling anxiety, if your chest is tightening and restricting, throw your body into an arch and just yawn stretch, like as big as you can, arms above your head. And you'll notice that you will literally discharge the load, the chemical load of that experience, and you will start to feel lighter. So you can use anxiety to try to restart the fascial reflex also.
So is that why, like, my morning stretch that I just, sometimes it feels so freaking good. And I always say to my husband, why does that feel so good? I'm like stretching into everything in my body and just feels so amazing.
That's your fascia. That's fascia.
Fascia.
Yeah, that's not muscles, that's fascia. It's elative. It's elative. And this is what's so interesting. When you do GST, that's my stuff. You asked me my credential, or my, not credentials, but my specs and stuff.
Yeah.
GST is my company. I won't even go into why I called it that, which is really funny because it has no recollection to fascia at all.
Okay.
But I was 18 when I named it after talking to trademark lawyers, and it was crazy.
Okay.
Overly creative and underly served. But so GST, when people come into GST, it doesn't feel like a traditional workout because it's not targeting like muscles. And so people walk out feeling kind of like they've had this like really deep massage, like an Adam yawn went off in your
Yeah.
body, like, and it kind of like relaxes you even though you're deeply fatigued because it's still building strength and it's still circulating energy. It's making detoxification happen at a higher rate, at a higher level. But I think that is because fascia really like wants different things in order to de-stress you. Movement is your number one de-stressor. And people know that when they go to the workout, they're like, I just gotta want to go burn off my day. But they're actually burning their adrenals. They're not actually like providing the antidote,
Right.
which is the adrenal response. I mean, the endorphin response.
Right.
And so when you start doing these movements, fascia will naturally like elicit higher levels of endorphin response. And it is blessing. And that's one of the reason that you can use your anxiety to do as a reminder, as an alarm, like set the alarm, and then you can do those movements, and it will really start to help you manage your stresses massively.
Amazing.
So you can find me. My company is GST Body. And you can find me at gstbody.com. I'm Anna Rahe, A-N-N-A Rahe. It's weirdly spelled. It's R-A-H-E, which is Rahe phonetically. I don't know if that helps listeners because you won't remember the spelling. AnnaRahe.com. And those are the handles on Instagram. So you can find us on Anna Rahe of GST or GST Body. And that's where we do a lot of our stuff. GST Body on YouTube. There's just kind of like, it's the same thing on every different channel, right? It's kind of like doesn't change. So if you're inquisitive and if you're curious, and if you have a nagging thing that just won't go away, like you were talking about your lymph and stuff, it's really interesting. GST attracts people with chronic stuff because they've tried everything else. And fascia opens this really beautiful new frontier of solutions to people who have just been like, I've done everything and it's just not getting better. So if you have like chronic fatigue, if you have like, Crohn's, I mean, it's so applicable to everything.
Or temporary. That's the thing too. Like now that I'm doing this, I find it's working, but it hasn't gone away. It's warmer outside now, and now I'm starting to swell again, and I have to work on it constantly. But we will talk about it again. And another thing, just a quick question, we don't have to go into the full answer now, but so for my husband, for example, is working on rebuilding his hips. His hips are not happy. So, and he's, is really restrictive, and he's trying to do it by his own right. So could there be a component here in rebuilding tissue, like connective tissue with that?
That's the remodeling that I was talking about, fascia remodeling.
Okay.
But one of the things that he should really look at is to rebuild, you need to create movement in other places. One of our problems is that we're so stationary in our torso, and then we move our arms and legs around. It's like mortar and pestle, right? And they're just grinding away, and people have tons of hip problems because of that. So ask your husband to focus on movement of the pelvis rather than movement of the leg.
Okay.
And that will help to turn. And if he starts to apply that are rotational in examples, like, so every joint opens in the human body based on laws of torsion, it's called. It's the same force that you open a pickle jar with. So when you want to open a pickle jar, you have the base and then you have the lid. And you always turn the base in one direction and you turn the lid in the opposite because both surfaces need to move in order to open the jar. And so we need to do the same thing. Your husband in his hips, we tend to be sedimentary and really locked in our pelvis because we tuck it under to protect our back. And then we move our legs around and tighten all of this stuff. And so we need to have your husband lift his hips up and back and then start learning to move the lid rather than the base. And you use this kind of analogy of the leg needs to move one way and the pelvis moves the other. And so he'll start to get a lot more flexibility using that technique rather than just static stretching of your hips.
Cool.
So
Okay.
that's an
Okay. Oh my
I
God.
love real life examples.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? So, okay, I've got
Right.
lots of questions still that we didn't get into. So we're definitely going to have to do this again. And I super
We'll
appreciate,
do
I
volume
love
two.
your totally, because you have such a like the way you speak about it when you're doing your videos and you're teaching people is just you were so integrated and you it's like
Mhm.
you were literally almost seeing it happen as you're speaking about it and it's super cool. I really have great respect for that because you've gone deep and you know it and you speak to it and it's just and it's a whole different language and it's a whole different and what I love about it and I said this in my lymph because we slightly touched on fashion my last interview on lymph is it's a whole new relationship with self, right? You get to know yourself in such an intimate way.
Mhm.
And
I
I
love what you're saying.
love
That's
that
beautiful.
because we
It
don't know
is.
who we are, right?
We
On
do
so
not
many
live in
levels.
we live disembodied, right?
Totally. Totally.
We live disembodied and
Yeah.
our brains are atrophying, our souls are atrophying, and our bodies are atrophying.
100%.
And I love what your language is beautiful to capture these like really integrative perspective, which is we're not body and brain. I just listened to this great podcast by this woman neurologist, and she was like talking about how the old way that we used to think of neurology is that it was the brain was everything and the body was just the, like the minion that was doing what the
Right.
brain was telling it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
she
yeah.
said, new neurological science is actually saying the reverse, that the
Wow.
body is the primary processor and primary generator of our reality, and that it is only the brain that is processing. And I thought
Wow.
that was so fascinating because that is literally how I experienced my healing, my depression. I still believe in therapy and I definitely believe in working with the mind as much as the body. There's no separation, right? Integration
Right.
is the key, but it gives us a new key, right? We keep jamming this key in the lock and overemphasizing this like analysis and the story and our narrative and our blah, blah, blah. It's like, what if we actually didn't need the brain with all its stories and imprints? And what if the body could actually heal the brain and give the brain a break? The barrier to actually go beyond our story of wiring all of our defense. The body, hey, let me give you a feeling and a color and an idea that you can work with. Heal there, there's this new, it's kind of like a new, right? Isolatedly integrated. Did you hear
You're
any of
really
that?
breaking up now, unfortunately, because I know there's really good stuff in there, but I can't hear you. Oh no. Maybe that's our cue. I know there's
You
so
didn't
much.
hear
We got
any
to
of it.
talk about that more because that's a totally different paradigm, right? That's completely, and that's what I love. We never know. We never fully know. There's always something new to learn. That's awesome. That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to say thank you now because it's falling apart, and I know you got to go get your kiddos. So I super appreciate, just hold on for 1 sec, but I'm gonna stop it. But I super appreciate this. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I'm so glad I found you. And we're gonna continue this talk in the very near future. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you like this, so everybody, this affects all of you. This affects every aspect of your being. So learning how to nourish your fascia, how to have healthy fascia is going to benefit you, even if you're not aware of that you need more help, because the chances are, there's something that could be nourishing that health of your fascia. So check out Anna Rahe, check her out on Instagram, check her out on her YouTube channel, check her out on her website. She's got a store where you can buy things that she has designed for your body and share this along because I know so many people can benefit from this interview. Thank you, Anna.